Hey everyone, and welcome to our third and final week discussing poverty by America. Today I'm just going to talk a little bit about municipal zoning, which is a theme that sort of repeats throughout the book. Right, so Desmond has some really great quotes here, and with apologies, I'm going to read this one in its entirety. You can learn a lot about a town from its walls. Our first walls were primitive things, sharpened tree trunks, mud, and stone. We learned to dig trenches and build parapets. Someone in the American West invented barbed wire. Today, we fashion our walls out of something much more durable and dispiriting: money and laws. Zoning laws govern what kind of property can be built in a community, and because different kinds of properties generally house different kinds of people, those laws also govern who gets in and who does not. Like all walls, they determine so much, and like all walls, they are boring. There may be no phrase more soulless in the English language than municipal zoning ordinance. Yet, there is perhaps no better way to grasp the soul of a community than this. Okay, so to back up a little and explain what zoning is, to organize cities, land areas are set aside for some uses. And this prevents industry from, say, setting up in residential areas. Like, this can be good. Most people don't want the plot of land next to them where they live to be turned into a loud or polluting or any other sort of like industrial base, right? So we have industrial areas and we have residential areas. But even if some zoning is good, zoning is also obscure. Most people don't pay attention to it. And so it gets used for a lot of other purposes. So one thing that very relevant to this discussion is a surprising amount of the US is zoned only for single family homes, which are by far the most expensive form of housing. And this has a relationship not only to like the inequality that we're talking about in this book, but also to the general question of like why housing is so expensive, right? This is its own problem. So I like this graphic sort of explaining, what's sort of missing in between what we have. So I think a general defense of zoning goes essentially like people don't want to live next to mid-rise or high-rise housing. Even if you grant that preferences, like there's a lot of stuff that's very like in between, like a detached single family house and something that fits more people per area and is ultimately cheaper per resident, right? So I'm just gonna dive into Louisville because I live in Louisville, and so I've looked into the zoning codes in Louisville, but I think the situation is to some extent similar. There are some cities that are doing much better than others. Austin, for instance, has been very successful, I believe, in building lots of housing, while New York and San Francisco have done quite poorly. That said, I mean, there's still places lots of people want to live, but you do see housing prices rise when people cannot build housing that can affordably accommodate people. So over half of Louisville's land is reserved for large single-family dwellings, and only 6% of it is zoned for multifamily use. So roughly, Louisville's zoning code actually has quite a few different areas, but for the sake of making it somewhat more understandable and able to look at it, I lumped it into 5 categories. You've got multifamily residential, single-family residential, single-family large lot, which requires 9,000 square feet, which is reasonably large for a single-family house. Not absurd, like you drive through and you notice it, but like it's a large lot. And then there's like commercial, industrial, and then there's some other categories that are largely related to commercial, but not quite. And so, yeah, this is what I was talking about before. Over half of it is single family and requires a large lot. And then almost another fifth of it is single family, but doesn't require a large lot. And then only 6% of it is multifamily residential. And you can actually look at where this is located. And if you go to the link, if you're curious about a particular address, like if you live in Louisville, you can actually just type in that address and find out about the zoning code. When you hover over it, it tells you exactly what the zoning code is, in addition to the like category information that I've used to color code it by. So, as you can tell, there are just like very small patches of multifamily housing, and almost everything is by default zoned single family large lot, right? Okay, and so Desmond comes to this conclusion: how can we at last end our embrace of segregation? The most important thing we can do is to replace exclusionary zoning policies with inclusionary ordinances, tearing down our walls and using the rubble to build bridges. There are two parts to this. The first is to get rid of all the devious legal minutiae we've developed to keep low-income families out of high-opportunity neighborhoods. Rules that make it illegal to build multifamily apartment complexes or smaller, more affordable homes. We cannot in good faith claim that our communities are anti-racist or anti-poverty if they continue to uphold exclusionary zoning, our politer, quieter means of promoting segregation. Okay, as you can tell, like Desmond takes this issue and takes it very seriously and says, hey, this is a leverage point, so to speak, where we can get into the boring, dirty, detailed work of public policy and make a difference by paying attention to an area that can be changed and that can put an end to this sort of residential segregation, right? So these are the discussion questions. Looking forward to the discussion this week.